The giant council hall was full of noise and strange sounds from hundreds of alien beings. Jiho Kim sat in the small corner section that was marked for minor species. He wore his best black suit and tried to look calm even though his heart was beating fast. Next to him, Dr. Mara Choi kept looking at her datapad over and over again. She had read their proposal so many times that she knew every word by heart. The council hall was massive and could hold thousands of beings. The walls were made of some kind of glowing crystal that changed colors when different aliens spoke. At the center was a huge floating platform where the most important council members sat. These were the ones who made all the decisions for the galaxy. Jeho looked around at all the different alien species. There were the Vraxians who looked like giant lizards walking on two legs. They had scales that shimmered in the light and claws that could probably cut through metal. Their leader, Counselor Thekvar, was speaking now, and his voice was so deep it made the floor shake. On the other side were the Zilani, who looked like enormous butterflies with wings that sparkled like jewels. They flew around instead of walking, and when they talked it sounded like music. But Jiho knew that their pretty appearance was hiding sharp minds that could calculate faster than any computer. There were dozens of other species, too. Some looked like walking trees with branches for arms. Others were like floating gas clouds with glowing eyes. Some had tentacles instead of hands, and others had too many eyes to count. But they all had one thing in common. They all looked down on humans. Counselor Thekvar raised his huge clawed hand, and the whole hall became quiet. His yellow eyes looked directly at Jiho and Myra. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire space. Your request for expanded trade routes has been reviewed by this council. After careful consideration, we have decided to deny your proposal. The human species lacks the technological advancement needed for such important galactic commerce. Perhaps in another 100 years you might be ready to try again. Jeho felt his face get hot, but he kept his expression calm. He had expected this answer, but it still hurt to hear it said out loud in front of everyone. He stood up slowly, and his chair made a small scraping sound that seemed very loud in the quiet hall. With all respect, Counselor Thekvar, our shipping records show that we deliver goods 15% faster than the galactic average. Our manufacturing has grown 3 times bigger in just 10 years. We have the numbers to prove everything we are saying. The hall exploded with sounds that Jiho realized was alien laughter. The Zilani fluttered their wings and made tinkling sounds like broken glass. The tree-like beings rustled their leaves in what seemed like amusement. Even the gas cloud aliens changed colors and patterns that probably meant they were laughing too. One of the Zilani delegates flew closer to the human section. Her voice was like singing, but the words were cruel. Humans always make their small achievements sound bigger than they really are. Your fastest ships can barely reach the speeds that our great-grandparents used when they were children. You're like babies trying to play with adult toys. Dr. Myra Choi stood up next to Jiho. She was a scientist and always believed that facts could win any argument. Her voice was clear and strong as she spoke. We have sent detailed reports about our new quantum drive engines. The energy they use is much less than anything else in the galaxy. Our test results show improvements that should make every species interested in working with us. But Counselor Thekvar was already moving on to other business. He waved his clawed hand like he was brushing away an annoying insect. The gesture made Jiho feel very small and unimportant. Earth contributes almost nothing to galactic civilization. Your world makes nothing that we cannot get better and cheaper from other places. This discussion is now finished. The massive hall began to empty as different alien species floated or walked or flew toward the exits. Some of them looked at the human delegates with what might have been pity. Others just ignored them completely, like they were not even there. Deshiho and Mera gathered their papers and datapads. They had prepared for months for this meeting. They had practiced their speeches and prepared answers for every possible question. They had brought proof of every claim they made. But none of it had mattered. As they walked toward the exit, Jiho noticed that other minor species were also leaving. There was a delegation from a world called Kepler 7. Their species looked like tall, thin people with blue skin and big black eyes. They had also been denied something they had asked for. There was also a group from the Outer Rim territories. These were humans who had left Earth generations ago to start colonies in distant star systems. Even they were treated better than Earth humans because they had been independent longer. Myra walked beside Jiho, and he could see that she was thinking hard about something. Her scientific mind was probably already working on their next move. She had always been the type of person who solved problems instead of just complaining about them. Outside the council hall, the spaceport was busy with ships coming and going. Jiho watched a Vraxian battlecruiser launch into space. Its engines were so powerful that the ground shook when it took off. Then he saw a Zelani transport ship that moved so gracefully it looked like it was dancing through the air, but he also saw human ships. They were smaller and not as fancy-looking, but they were well-built and efficient. The crews worked together smoothly and got their jobs done without wasting time or energy. That had to count for something during the long flight back to Earth. Jiho stared out the window at the stars. For 50 years humanity had been part of the galactic community. They had followed every rule and respected every tradition. They had asked politely for everything they wanted and accepted whatever scraps they were given. They had been patient when other species made jokes about their primitive technology. They had smiled and said thank you when they were given the worst trade deals. They had waited their turn and hoped that someday they would be treated as equals, but today something had changed inside. Jiho, he realized that no matter how hard humans worked or how much they improved, the other species would always see them as inferiors. The council did not want partners. They wanted servants. Myra must have been thinking the same thing because she finally spoke after hours of silence. They are not going to change their minds about us. No matter what we do or how much we prove ourselves, they will always think we are not good enough. Jiho nodded slowly. He had reached the same conclusion. Then maybe it is time to stop asking for their permission and start making our own decisions. The words hung in the air between them like a promise or maybe a threat. Change was coming, and it would start with two humans who had finally decided they were tired of being treated like children. The stars outside the window seemed brighter somehow as their ship carried them home to Earth. Behind them, the council continued their meetings and made their decisions without caring about humanity. But they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had shown humans exactly what they thought of them. And humans had very good memories. 3 hours after landing on Earth, Jiho Kim was already in the emergency meeting room at Global Space Coalition headquarters. The room was filled with holographic displays showing the faces of Earth's most important leaders. They had all dropped everything to attend this urgent call. Admiral Susie Park appeared first on the main screen. She was aboard her flagship somewhere near the Jupiter defense stations. Her short black hair was pulled back strictly, and her military uniform showed rows of medals from various conflicts. She had spent her whole career protecting Earth and making the human fleet stronger. Dr. Haiyan Zhang joined from his laboratory on Luna Station. His lab coat was covered with strange stains from whatever experiment he had been working on. Behind him, complex machinery hummed and sparked with energy. He was the scientist who had created most of Earth's advanced technology, including their new quantum drives. Minister Taiwan connected from the diplomatic center in Geneva. His expensive suit and calm manner made him look like the perfect politician, but his eyes showed the sharp intelligence that had made him Earth's best negotiator. He had been the one pushing for better relationships with alien species. Dr. Mara Choi sat next to Jiho in the physical meeting room. She had not said much during the flight home, but he could see her mind working on solutions to their problem. She had her datapad open and was already making notes and calculations. Jiho stood up and faced the screens. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the anger underneath his calm words. They made their position very clear today. We are not partners in their galactic community. We are not even considered equals. We are pets that they remember to feed when they feel like being kind. Admiral Park leaned forward and the camera caught the hard expression on her face. Our intelligence reports have been saying this for years. They deliberately keep emerging. Species weak and dependent. The Zilani went through exactly the same treatment 300 years ago. They only got respect after they proved themselves in a major war. Dr. Hyan pulled up holographic charts showing Earth's recent technological advances. The numbers were impressive and showed steady growth in every area of science and engineering. They have no idea what they are dismissing. Our quantum drives are not just more efficient than theirs. They represent a completely new approach to space travel. Our material science has advanced beyond anything in their public databases. They are so busy feeling superior that they have stopped paying attention to what we are actually doing. Minister Taewon adjusted his tie and spoke in his careful diplomatic voice. The real question we need to answer is, what do we do about this situation? We have several options ranging from continued cooperation to complete independence. Jiho walked to the window that looked out over the busy Earth spaceport. Hundreds of ships were taking off and landing in perfect coordination. Human crews worked together with an efficiency that impressed even alien observers. The sight filled him with pride in what his species had accomplished. "We leave," he said simply. The room became very quiet. Even the background noise from the various locations seemed to stop. Admiral Park was the first to break the silence. "You mean complete withdrawal from all galactic institutions and agreements?" Jiho turned back to face the screens. "Not withdrawal, independence. We stop asking them for permission to do things. We stop begging for their approval. We build our own trade networks and make our own alliances. When they finally realize what they have lost, it will be too late for them to do anything about it." Darmira Choi looked up from her notes and spoke for the first time since the meeting started. "The Outer Rim colonies have been reporting increased pirate attacks for months. The Galactic Council response has been minimal because those areas are not considered important enough. If we were to independently address these security issues, we could build relationships with species that the Council ignores." Jiho smiled for the first time since leaving the Council chambers. "That is exactly what I was thinking. We start helping the species that they consider unimportant. We show them what human cooperation and efficiency can accomplish." Admiral Park was already thinking like a military strategist. "Our fleet is smaller than the major galactic powers, but our ships are more advanced than they realize. Our crews are better trained and more disciplined. We could establish security patrols in areas where the Council has failed to maintain order." Dr. Hanjiang was getting excited as he thought about the possibilities. "Without Council restrictions on our research and development, we could advance much faster. We have been holding back some of our innovations because they wanted us to share everything with them. Now we can develop our technology for our own benefit." Minister Taewon looked worried about the diplomatic implications. This would be seen as a direct challenge to Council authority. They might respond with economic sanctions or even military action. Jiho had already considered this possibility. "Let them try. Our economy is more independent than they think. We have been building relationships with non-Council species for years. As for military action, they would have to justify attacking a species that has never threatened anyone and only wants to be left alone." The discussion continued for 3 more hours as they worked out the details of humanity's withdrawal from galactic society. They would not make any dramatic announcements or public statements. Instead, they would quietly stop participating in Council programs and initiatives. Earth would recall its ambassadors from Council worlds. Human ships would stop requesting permission to enter contested space. Trade vessels would begin establishing direct relationships with Rimworld colonies that the Council barely acknowledged. Most importantly, they would begin helping species and colonies that had been abandoned or ignored by the galactic community. Every act of assistance would demonstrate human values and capabilities without any need for boasting or propaganda. Dr. Myra Choi was put in charge of identifying the most promising opportunities for intervention. Her scientific background would help her analyze which situations offered the best chance for success. Admiral Park would begin repositioning the human fleet to support these new independent operations. The ships would be ready to provide security and transportation for humanitarian missions. Dr. Haiyan Zhang would accelerate development of advanced technologies without worrying about council restrictions or requirements for technology sharing. Minister Tay 1 would begin quiet diplomatic outreach to non-council species and organizations that might be interested in cooperation with humanity. As the meeting ended, Jiho felt a sense of relief that he had not experienced in years. For the first time since joining the galactic community, humanity would be making its own decisions and following its own path. The council had dismissed them as primitive and unimportant. Soon they would learn exactly how wrong they had been. But by then it would be too late to repair the relationship they had destroyed through their arrogance and contempt. Earth was about to show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they stopped asking for permission and started doing what they knew was right. The age of human independence was beginning, and the council had no idea what was coming. Captain Boram Shin stood on the bridge of her ship watching the debris field that surrounded the mining colony of Keth 7. Pieces of metal and rock floated silently in space, creating a dangerous maze that required careful navigation. Her ship, the Earth vessel Harmony, was one of the new quantum drive-equipped vessels that could cross vast distances in record time. The distress signal had been broadcasting for 3 days, which was more than enough time for any council patrol ship to respond. But no help had come for the miners trapped on the damaged colony. The council considered this region too remote and unimportant to waste resources on rescue operations. Lieutenant Junho Lee worked at the sensor station, scanning the colony structure for signs of life. His young face was focused with concentration. As he adjusted the controls to get better readings through all the floating debris, "Captain, I am detecting the main colony ship, but it has major hull breaches on at least 4 levels. Life signs are weak, but I am reading approximately 50 survivors, still alive in the emergency shelters." Boram nodded to her chief engineer, Dr. Hana SEO, who was already preparing the emergency rescue equipment. The elderly woman had volunteered for this mission, even though she could have stayed safely on Earth. Her expertise with life support systems had saved many lives during previous rescue operations. Deploy the emergency habitat modules and begin evacuation procedures. I want everyone off that colony within the next 12 hours. As her crew worked with practiced efficiency, Boram thought about how much had changed in the past 6 months. Earth had quietly withdrawn from 16 different council-sponsored programs and initiatives. Human ships no longer waited for official permission. Before entering contested or uncharted space, the rescue operation was complex and dangerous. The colony had been struck by a large asteroid that had damaged their main power systems and life support. The survivors were running out of air, and the colony structure was slowly breaking apart. Dr. Hana SEO led the rescue teams that went aboard the damaged colony. They worked in the dangerous environment, wearing protective suits and carrying emergency breathing equipment for the survivors. Each trip back to the ship brought more grateful miners who had given up hope of being saved. The Kethian miners were a reptilian species with tough scaled skin that helped them work in harsh mining conditions. Their leader was an older male named Grex, whose scales bore the scars of many years working in dangerous mines. When Dr. Sao brought him aboard the Harmony, he could barely speak. The council said help would come, he whispered through the translation device. They told us to wait and be patient. We waited, but no one came except you. Boram helped the injured miner to the medical bay, where her crew was treating the other survivors. Many of them had injuries from the asteroid impact, and all of them were suffering from breathing problems due to the damaged life support systems. Humans do not wait for permission to do what is right, she told Grex. When people need help, we provide it regardless of politics or regulations. The rescue took 18 hours of continuous work. When it was finished, 47 Kethian miners owed their lives to human efficiency and compassion. The grateful survivors gathered in the main cargo bay, where Boram addressed them through the translation system. Your colony ship is too damaged to repair, but we will transport you to the nearest habitable world where you can start over. Earth stands ready to provide whatever assistance you need to rebuild your lives. Word of the rescue spread through the Outer Rim communication networks faster than any official Council news service. Within days, 3 more remote colonies had sent messages requesting direct trade agreements with Earth. They had heard that humans treated everyone fairly regardless of their species or importance to galactic politics. Captain Giwan Lim was patrolling another sector when he received reports of pirate attacks on merchant vessels. The pirates were using an asteroid field as their base and had been raiding trade ships for months. Council security forces had not responded. Because the area was considered low priority, Giwan moved his small fleet into position and began hunting the pirates, using advanced sensor technology that could track ships even when they were hiding among the asteroids. His crews were specially trained for this type of operation and worked together with military precision. The pirate base was actually an old mining station that had been abandoned years ago. The criminals had moved in and set up their operations there because they knew no one would come looking for them. They were not prepared for the sudden appearance of human warships. The battle was brief and decisive. Human ships were smaller than Council vessels, but their quantum drives made them much faster and more maneuverable. Their weapons were more accurate and their crews were better coordinated. The pirates surrendered quickly when they realized they could not escape. Instead of simply destroying the pirate base, Giwan decided to turn it into a security station. He left behind a small garrison of human marines and established regular patrols throughout the region. Merchant ships could now travel safely through space that had been dangerous for years. Back on Earth, Dr. Haiyan Zhang was achieving breakthrough after breakthrough in his research laboratories. Without Council restrictions and requirements for technology sharing, his teams were advancing faster than ever before. Their new quantum drives now outperformed Council technology by a factor of 3. The latest innovation was a communication system that could send messages across the galaxy almost instantly. Previous communication had required ships to physically carry messages from one star system to another. Now human colonies and allies could coordinate their activities in real time. Admiral Susie Park was overseeing the construction of a new class of vessels designed specifically for independent operations. These ships were larger and more powerful than anything Earth had built before. They could carry enough supplies for extended missions and had the firepower to handle any threat they might encounter. The new ships were also designed to be impressive. Admiral Park understood that appearance mattered in diplomatic situations. When other species saw human vessels, they needed to understand that Earth was now a major power that deserved respect. Dr. Myra Choi was analyzing reports from all the human operations throughout the galaxy. The pattern was clear and encouraging. Every time humans helped another species or solved a problem that the Council had ignored, they gained new allies and trading partners. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium had signed an exclusive contract to provide rare metals to Earth at prices well below galactic market rates. The Hegemony Trading Alliance was requesting negotiations for closer cooperation. Even some Council member species were quietly asking about human services and technology. Most importantly, dozens of previously unknown species were emerging from the galactic edges where they had been hiding from Council attention. They were eager to trade and cooperate with humans who treated them as equals rather than subjects to be controlled. None of this information was reaching the Council chambers where the major powers continued their political games and bureaucratic procedures. They were too focused on their internal conflicts to notice that humanity had stopped participating in their system and was building something better. The transformation was remarkable, and it was happening faster than anyone had expected. Human innovation combined with human compassion was creating a new model for galactic civilization. Species that had been ignored or oppressed by the Council found themselves welcomed into a growing network of cooperation and mutual benefit. The revolution was silent, but it was real and it was changing everything. Trade Minister Nari Yoon stood in the command center of Harmony Station looking out at the most incredible sight in the galaxy. The massive space station that humans had built in just 8 months was now the busiest trading hub in 3 sectors. Ships from 17 different species were docked at the platforms, loading and unloading. Cargo in perfect coordination. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering and design. It had multiple rotating sections that provided artificial gravity for species that needed it while also having zero gravity areas for those who preferred to float. The architecture was both functional and beautiful, with flowing lines that seemed to dance in the starlight. Not a single council vessel was among the hundreds of ships that came and went every day. The council had made it clear that they considered Harmony Station to be an illegal operation that violated their trade regulations. But since the station was built in unclaimed space, there was nothing they could legally do to stop it. Dongmin Park, her chief assistant, came up to her with the latest trade reports. His excited expression told her that the news was good even before he spoke. Minister, the Zephyrians just signed another exclusive mining contract. They are offering rare earth elements at 30% below council market rates. The Cathian survivors from the colony rescue have also agreed to establish a permanent mining operation under human protection. Nari nodded as she watched the tactical display that showed human influence spreading throughout the outer regions of the galaxy. Green dots represented colonies and species that had signed cooperation agreements with Earth. The pattern was growing larger every day. What is the hegemony response to our latest expansion? She asked. They have requested an urgent meeting with our diplomatic team. Apparently, their trade volume has dropped significantly since the Rimworlds started dealing directly with us instead of going through council-controlled routes. Through the observation deck transparent walls, Nari could see the incredible activity of human-controlled space. Independent colonies were thriving under Earth protection. New species emerged from the galactic edges, almost daily eager to join the growing network of cooperation. Captain Gewan Lim's voice came through the communication system from his patrol fleet in the outer spiral region. His report was typical of what they were hearing from all the human protected zones. Minister, pirate activity is down 80% in our patrol zones over the past month. The remaining criminal groups are actively avoiding any space that is under human protection. Merchant ships are reporting the safest trading conditions in decades. The transformation was remarkable, and it was happening faster than anyone had predicted. Without the council bureaucratic restrictions and slow decision-making processes, humans moved with purpose and efficiency. They helped first and asked questions later. They innovated constantly and shared their advances freely with their allies. Most importantly, they had stopped caring about council approval or recognition. They simply did what needed to be done and let the results speak for themselves. Dr. Mara Choi, now serving as Earth Chief Science Officer, was reviewing reports from their exploration fleets. Her teams had made discoveries that were changing their understanding of the galaxy itself. We have discovered 4 new habitable worlds this month, she reported during the daily briefing. Our exploration teams have also located 3 previously unknown intelligent species that are interested in peaceful contact. The Council exploration efforts have found nothing comparable in the same time period. The reason for human success was becoming obvious to everyone except the Council leadership. While the major galactic powers maintained their rigid hierarchies and complicated approval processes, humans simply made decisions and acted on them immediately when they encountered a problem. They solved it. When they met a new species, they offered friendship and cooperation. When they found resources, they shared them fairly with their allies. The approach was so simple that it seemed almost too obvious to work, but it was working beyond their most optimistic projections. Commander Hyuk Kim was leading the newest human colony ship toward a world that had been abandoned by its original inhabitants. After a plague had swept through their civilization, the world was perfectly habitable, but the Council had declared it off-limits due to quarantine regulations that were hundreds of years old. Human medical teams had analyzed samples from the world and determined that the plague had died out centuries ago. The planet was now safe for colonization and offered excellent opportunities for agriculture and mining. A Council refusal to lift the quarantine was based on bureaucratic caution rather than scientific evidence. The colony ship carried 5,000 volunteers from Earth, along with everything they needed to establish a thriving settlement. These were people who wanted to build something new rather than wait for permission from officials who would never give it. As the ship approached the world, Commander Kim could see that it was even more beautiful than the survey reports had indicated. Blue oceans sparkled under a golden sun while green continents showed signs of recovering ecosystems. This would be humanity's 15th independent colony and possibly their most successful, back on Harmony. Station Minister Neri was meeting with delegates from the Altarian Confederacy. The Altarians were a proud warrior species that had been feuding with the Council for decades over territory disputes. They had heard about human military efficiency and were interested in discussing mutual defense agreements. The Altarian leader was a tall female with silver skin and 4 arms that could move independently. Her name was Commander Zara, and she had fought in dozens of battles against pirates and invaders. She spoke directly without the diplomatic language that most species preferred. Humans have accomplished in 1 year what the Council has failed to do in centuries. You have brought peace to lawless regions and prosperity to forgotten worlds. The Altarian fleet would be honored to fight alongside such capable allies. The meeting resulted in a formal alliance that gave humans access to Altarian military technology, while providing the Altarians with human logistics and communication systems. It was exactly the kind of mutually beneficial relationship that the Council claimed to support but never actually created. Similar agreements were being signed throughout human-controlled space. The Hegemony Trading Alliance had agreed to give humans priority access to their commercial networks. The Zephyria mining consortiums were sharing advanced extraction techniques in exchange for human protection services. Even more significantly, several Council member species were quietly reaching out to human representatives. They were not ready to openly break with the Council, but they were interested in establishing unofficial relationships with the growing human alliance. Dr. He and Zhang teams had achieved another major breakthrough in quantum physics that would revolutionize space travel throughout the galaxy. The new drives could cross intergalactic distances in weeks, rather than the years required by conventional technology. But instead of sharing this advancement with the galactic community as they had done in the past, the humans kept it for themselves and their allies. The Council had made it clear that they did not value human contributions, so humans had stopped making them freely available. The decision was already paying dividends. Human ships could now reach distant galaxies where new civilizations and resources waited to be discovered. They were expanding their influence beyond the borders of known space. While the Council remained focused on their local political conflicts, Admiral Susie Park was reviewing intelligence reports that showed growing concern among Council leadership. For the first time in centuries, major galactic developments were occurring without their oversight or control. Worse, these developments were demonstrably superior to anything the Council had achieved. The implications were staggering for the established galactic order. Species that had been loyal Council members for thousands of years were now looking to humanity for leadership and protection. The Council authority was being quietly undermined by a species they had dismissed as irrelevant just 1 year earlier. Change was coming to the galaxy, and it was centered around human values of cooperation, efficiency, and mutual respect. The old system of hierarchical control and bureaucratic obstruction was being replaced by something far more effective and fair. The ripple effect was spreading, and soon it would reach the Council chambers themselves. Councillor Thekvar stared at the massive holographic display, showing galactic trade flows, and his reptilian features were twisted with confusion and growing alarm. The data streaming across the screens made no sense according to everything he understood about galactic economics and politics. Someone was clearly making a mistake with the information systems. His aide, a nervous Trilithian named Vex Cole, stood nearby with his tentacles writhing in patterns that indicated extreme anxiety. The creature had been trying to explain the situation for the past hour, but Thekvar kept refusing to believe what he was hearing. Explain this data again, but more clearly this time, Thekvar demanded while pointing at the confusing numbers and charts floating in the air around them. The outer rim trade volume has increased by 400% over the past year. Vex Cole reported while his tentacles moved frantically over the control interfaces. New shipping routes have been established, connecting previously isolated star systems. Response times to emergency calls in contested space have improved by over 70%. Var eyes narrowed as he tried to understand how such massive improvements could occur without the Council knowledge or involvement. The Outer Rim had always been considered a backwater region that barely contributed to galactic civilization. And the Council role in these remarkable improvements, he asked, although he was already beginning to suspect the answer. That is the problem. Counselor, we are not involved in any of these developments. Our participation has been exactly zero. The revelation hit the Council chamber like a shock wave when Vex Cole presented his findings to the full assembly. For the first time in over 1,000 years, major galactic developments were occurring, without Council oversight, approval, or control. Even worse, these developments were demonstrably superior to anything the Council had achieved in recent memory. Councillor Yuxtal of the Zelani delegation studied the reports with her compound eyes, while her wings fluttered nervously. Her musical voice carried tones of disbelief and growing panic. These efficiency ratings are completely impossible. No known species can achieve these logistics and coordination numbers. The mathematics simply do not work according to our best economic models. Junior Counselor Vex Mora, who usually remained silent during major debates, finally spoke up. His voice was quiet, but his words carried throughout the vast chamber. The humans can achieve these numbers. We have been monitoring their activities for the past several months. Their quantum drive technology has advanced far beyond our current capabilities. Their organizational systems are more sophisticated than our most optimistic projections suggested was possible. Stunned silence filled the enormous chamber. The idea that a primitive species could surpass Council technology and efficiency was literally unthinkable to most of the assembled delegates. Many of them had never considered humans to be anything more than an amusing curiosity. Councillor Thekvar's voice carried a dangerous edge that made several smaller species shrink back in their seats. His claws extended slightly, which was a sign of barely controlled rage. Where exactly are the humans involved in all these remarkable improvements? The answer came from intelligence. Councillor Zeph Kryn, whose usually confident demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled panic. Her multiple eyes darted nervously around the chamber as she delivered the devastating news. They are running everything. All of it. The trade networks, the protection fleets, the exploration missions, the diplomatic initiatives. They have created an entire parallel civilization, and they have done it all without asking for our permission or approval. The implications were staggering, and they were becoming clearer with each piece of information that the intelligence teams provided. Species that had been loyal Council members for thousands of years were now looking to humanity for leadership, protection, and economic opportunity. The Council authority was being quietly, but effectively undermined by a species they had dismissed as irrelevant barely 18 months earlier. Even worse, the human approach was proving superior to Council methods in every measurable category. Councillor Rixtal pulled up additional data showing the extent of human influence throughout the galaxy. The display showed green indicators spreading across star systems that had previously been either ignored by the Council or considered too problematic to be worth their attention. Look at these security reports, she said while her wings trembled with emotion. Pirate activity has virtually disappeared in human-protected space. Merchant vessels are reporting the safest trading conditions in galactic history. Emergency response times have improved by factors that our best estimates said were impossible, but the most disturbing information was yet to come. Intelligence reports showed that several major Council member species were quietly establishing unofficial relationships with the human alliance. They were not ready to openly break with the Council, but they were clearly preparing for that possibility. The Hegemony Trading Alliance was redirecting significant resources toward human-controlled space. The Altarian Confederacy had signed a mutual defense treaty with Earth. Even some of the more established civilizations were sending discreet diplomatic missions to human colonies. Dr. Cal Theron, the council chief scientist, reviewed the technical reports with growing amazement. His crystalline form glowed brighter as his excitement increased, but his words carried ominous implications. Their quantum drive technology represents a complete paradigm shift in our understanding of physics. Their materials science has advanced decades beyond anything in our databases. Their computer systems process information using principles that we are still trying to understand. Counselor Thekvar was becoming increasingly agitated as the full scope of the situation became clear. His species had ruled the council for over 500 years, and the idea of losing that dominance to humans was intolerable. How did we miss developments of this magnitude, he demanded. We have intelligence services monitoring every major civilization in the galaxy. The answer came from multiple sources, and it painted a picture of council incompetence and arrogance that was almost too embarrassing to acknowledge. Human innovations had been dismissed without proper evaluation. Their requests for cooperation had been ignored or rejected without consideration. Their warnings about problems in the outer rim had been filed away and forgotten. Most significantly, the council had stopped paying attention to human activities after deciding that they were not important enough to monitor closely. The humans had taken advantage of this neglect to build their alternative civilization in plain sight. Junior Counselor Vex Mora provided the final devastating piece of information. His voice was barely above a whisper, but every word carried clearly through the silent chamber. Our economic analysts estimate that human-controlled space now represents approximately 30% of total galactic commerce. Their military capabilities are approaching parity with our own forces. Their diplomatic influence extends to over 40% of known civilizations. The numbers were staggering, and they represented a complete transformation of galactic power structures. The Council was no longer the dominant force in galactic civilization. They had competition, and that competition was winning. Counselor Thekvar realized that they faced a choice that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They could continue their arrogant dismissal of human capabilities and watch their influence continue to decline. Or they could swallow their pride and attempt to negotiate with the species they had treated with such contempt. Get me a direct communication link to Earth immediately, he ordered. We need to arrange a meeting with their leadership before this situation deteriorates any further. But even as he gave the order, Thekvar suspected that it might already be too late. The humans had spent 18 months building something better than what the Council offered. They might not be interested in returning to a system that had treated them so poorly. The Council awakening had come, but it might have come too late to matter. Ambassador Jiho Kim sat in his office on Earth, reading the urgent communication request from the Galactic Council with a mixture of deep satisfaction and weary resignation. After 18 months of complete silence from the Council, they were finally ready to talk. The irony was not lost on him that they were now the ones requesting a meeting. His secretary, Inhali, looked up from her desk where she had been monitoring the dozens of similar requests that had been flooding in from various council members and affiliated organizations. Everyone wanted to talk to the humans now that they realized what they had lost. Sir, the Council is requesting an immediate response to their communication. They are offering a full membership review and expanded trade privileges. They seem quite urgent about arranging a meeting. Jiho almost smiled at the desperation he could read between the lines of the official council language. These were the same beings who had dismissed humanity as primitive and irrelevant. Now they were practically begging for an audience. Tell them we will consider their request when our schedule permits, he replied calmly. We are quite busy with our current obligations and commitments. The response sent shock waves through the council chambers. When it arrived 6 hours later, the humans were no longer jumping at every council summons. They were treating the most powerful governmental body in galactic history like equals, or perhaps even like supplicants who had to wait their turn when the meeting finally took place. 3 weeks later, the power dynamic had shifted completely. The council had requested to meet at their traditional chambers, but the humans had insisted on neutral ground. The compromise was a space station in the buffer zone between council and human-controlled space. Counselor Var faced a confident human delegation led by Ambassador Jiho Kim, Admiral Susie Park, and Dr. Myra Choi. The chamber was smaller than the traditional council meeting hall, but it was filled with tension that seemed to crackle in the recycled air. The council members who attended were noticeably more subdued than they had been during that first dismissive meeting. Many of them kept glancing at the holographic displays showing the current state of galactic affairs, where human influence was clearly visible everywhere. Var began the meeting with what was clearly a prepared speech designed to save face while acknowledging the changed circumstances. His voice carried none of the arrogant dismissiveness that had characterized their previous interactions. We acknowledged that perhaps we were hasty in our previous assessments of human capabilities and contributions to galactic civilization. After careful review, we are prepared to offer humanity expanded trade privileges and full council membership with voting rights. Jiho interrupted with a single word that echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. No one had ever interrupted a senior counselor during a formal meeting. No. The word hung in the air for several long seconds while the council members tried to process what they had just heard. Several of the smaller species looked around nervously, while the major powers stared in shock at the human delegation. We are not interested in your trade privileges, Jiho continued in a calm but firm voice. We have developed our own trade networks that are more efficient and fair than anything you offer. We are not interested in your protection services, because we protect ourselves and our allies more effectively than you ever did. Admiral Park leaned forward slightly, and her military bearing commanded immediate attention from everyone in the chamber. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who knew exactly how strong her position was. We are not interested in your exploration contracts because we explore wherever we choose to go. We have discovered more new worlds and civilizations in the past year than your entire council has found in the past decade. Dr. Myra Choi activated a holographic display that showed the transformed state of the Outer Rim regions. The data was undeniable and impressive, showing dramatic improvements in every measurable category of civilization and prosperity. These are the results of genuine cooperation rather than hierarchical domination. Equal voices, shared benefits, and mutual respect. This is what we have built while you were busy maintaining your systems of control and bureaucracy. The display showed colony worlds thriving under human protection. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries were now completely safe. Species that had been ignored or oppressed by the Council were now prosperous members of the Human Alliance. Counselor Rix Tal of the Zalani delegation tried to regain some initiative in the conversation. Her musical voice carried notes of desperation that were obvious to everyone present. Surely, we can find some basis for cooperation between our civilizations. The Council has maintained galactic peace for over 1,000 years. We have experience and wisdom that could benefit your growing alliance. Jiho stood up, and his posture radiated the quiet confidence that came from knowing he held all the advantages in this negotiation. His voice remained respectful but firm as he delivered what amounted to an ultimatum. What we are interested in is genuine partnership. Real partnership between equals, not the master-servant relationship you have been offering. We are not asking to join your system because, frankly, your system does not work very well. Admiral Park stood beside him and added her own perspective on the military realities of the situation. Her words carried the weight of someone who had carefully analyzed the balance of power. Our fleets are smaller than yours, but our technology is superior. Our crews are better trained and more disciplined. Most importantly, we fight for principles and values rather than for territory and dominance. Dr. Choi provided the scientific and economic data that supported their position. Her calm presentation of facts was more devastating than any emotional argument could have been. Our quantum drive technology gives us strategic mobility that makes traditional fleet movements obsolete. Our economic networks generate more prosperity with less waste than anything in your databases. Our diplomatic relationships are based on mutual benefit rather than fear and intimidation. Var swallowed his pride and asked the question that everyone in the chamber was thinking but afraid to voice. His words came out barely above a whisper. What are your terms for some kind of agreement between us? Jiho looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. These were beings who had dismissed humanity as primitive,